We have seen more and more news for Immortal Empires released by Creative Assembly over the past few weeks, with the full map reveal, the introduction of sea lanes, and the starting locations for a number of the game's races. I've been surprised by the number of new locations, such as Alberic moving to Lustria, Volkmar taking up residence in the Southlands, and Nakai wandering all the way to the far coast of Grand Cathay. At the time of creating this video, we are yet to see the starting locations for the vampire counts. We know that Helmund Gorst is moving out of Manfred's basement and getting some new mechanic. I imagine he will end up near Nagashazir in the Darklands, and possibly inherit the Tomb King's Books of the Dead system, with some small changes. Aside from Gorst, I don't really expect much to change in regards to starting positions. I could of course be way off the mark, and we might see Isabella leave Vlad, and perhaps even see Heinrich leave the Grey Mountains for more interesting areas of the map. While fresh pastures for a lord can indeed make their campaigns more interesting, to me it's the race and faction mechanics that can really make for a great campaign experience. How much fun would Ikiclaw be without his workshop? How engaging were the Wood Elves without their sacred groves? I've long thought that the vampire counts are lacking in the mechanics department. Sure, they have their Bloodkiss upgrades, but let's be honest, it's showing its age when compared to the toys other races have received. Next to the Chaos Warriors, Norsca, and perhaps the Lizardmen, I'd say that the vampire counts are in most need of a rework. So I say it's time to start thinking of ways that the vampire counts can be improved. I have recently been playing a lot of a game called V Rising, which I consider a contender for Game of the Year. It's certainly one of the most polished and engaging gaming experiences I've had in many years, and it's still in early access with more content on the way. If you have not checked it out, I'd recommend you do so. For those that don't know, V Rising is all about vampires. It's a cross between an action RPG, a survival game, and Dark Souls, where you begin your journey as a lowly minor vampire with no possessions, and you have to learn to survive the many threats of the world, whether that be the beasts in the forest, the militia patrols, or the really nasty threat of severe sunburn during daylight hours. You then get to learn new skills by defeating world bosses, farm for supplies, and build your very own gothic castle. I'm finding it incredibly addictive, and I have not even played online yet. The developers have nailed the whole vampire aesthetic too, from having to suck the blood of your enemies to survive, to taking damage from silver, to having the ability to enthrall humans so they do your bidding. As I've been playing, I find myself thinking, some of these mechanics could work well for the vampire counts in Warhammer 3. I mentioned sucking the blood of enemies, and it's this mechanic that I think has the greatest potential for an adaptation to Warhammer, something that a system could be built upon for the vampire count's inevitable rework. In V Rising, every enemy in the world has a blood type, even the beasts that roam the forests. The blood type is related to the function of the enemy in the world, so a farmer or lumberjack would have the worker blood type, which would convey a set of bonuses related to resource gathering, while a militia guard or bandit would have the warrior blood type with bonuses attuned to fighting. On top of the blood type, there is the blood quality, a percentage out of 100 with the higher values providing the player with greater bonuses. When you feed on an enemy, you gain the bonuses of the blood type and quality until the blood drains from your system and you need to feed again. It's a great system that has you aware of the value of every enemy and makes you think about who to kill and who to feed upon when you encounter a group. Now, while the system wouldn't work in Warhammer 3 as it stands, it could be adapted. If each race in Warhammer were to be assigned their own blood type, then we could introduce the ability for vampire lords to drain blood from enemy characters on the battlefield. If the enemy character's health were below a certain threshold, then the player could trigger the ability and begin to drain the blood. The enemy character would be stunned for the duration, but if the Lord is attacked during this time, the attempt would fail. The player would get one chance to drain their blood, much like Lotharion has one attempt to capture a prisoner. The different races could have different levels of resistance to being fed upon. I'd imagine it would be a great deal harder to feed upon a Kroxigor hero than on a mere human. Some races would also be outright immune, such as Chaos Demons and Tomb Kings. If the feeding is successful, then the Vampire Lord would gain bonuses related to the blood of the Lord or hero that was fed upon. So feeding on a dwarf might provide resistances to magic, while sucking on an ogre, perish the thought, would increase the Vampire Lord's strength. There could be a wide variety of bonuses within the races too, as the blood of a skink hero would certainly be different from that of a slan. The bonuses would then fade over time, or be overridden if the same Vampire Lord feeds again. This could of course be taken a step further, with your Vampire Lords gaining experience each time they feed. This experience could be used in the skill tree to unlock new abilities, such as increased bonuses from feeding, increased duration of bonus effects, and new abilities such as transformations or magic spells. This would make individual Vampire Lords have more character, and would allow the player to tailor the Lord's skills to their own playstyle. I think it would certainly make for a more engaging system than the current Blood Kiss mechanic. Alongside the feeding, I would also have the concept of bottling the blood, so it can be used in a ritual to summon a free undead army. This would fill up a new meter over time, which has several milestones, which when passed would enable the ritual. The player would then have the chance to enact the ritual at a lower level to gain a less powerful army, or to build up their blood reserves to reach the next milestone and unlock an army with more powerful units. This system would give the player something to aim for longer term, while introducing more choice into how they approach their campaign. Do they want stronger Vampire Lords, or do they want to free summoned armies roaming around the map? So we have two systems based on the concept of feeding, systems that are well within CA's ability to introduce into the game. But there is another thing that the vampire counts need: diversity. By that I mean we need to see legendary Vampire Lords outside of the Von Karstein bloodline. We need the Lamians, Strigoi, Necrarchs, and Blood Dragons to be represented, all with their unique sets of abilities and focus. It's pretty much certain that we will see Neferata sometime in Game 3, which will give us a Lamian Lord, and it seems there is a chance of the Red Duke also making an appearance, so check off that Blood Dragon too. Hopefully Creative Assembly will add a Strigoi or Necrarch Legendary Lord before all is said and done, as the more bloodlines we have represented, the better. As these lords are added to the game, it would be cool to see new units added alongside them, and it would be very fitting to see them uniquely integrated into the feeding system. Perhaps Lamian vampires would have the ability to enthrall enemies, basically turning them into prisoners whose blood is on tap until they are fully drained. We could see Blood Dragon vampires gain experience for their skill tree by not feeding. They wouldn't gain the race bonuses, but they would progress through their skill tree much quicker and have more blood to fill the ritual meter. Strigoi, being more primal, may mean they always feed and cannot bottle blood. They would lose out on the ability to store blood for the rituals, but perhaps their human followers would instead gain bonuses to offset that disadvantage. What I'm driving at here is the various bloodlines can play very differently in a campaign. Now, this would be great for factions led by a vampire, but what about those pesky necromancers, Helmund Gorst and Heinrich Himmler? Well, we could remove them from the game. Would they really be missed? No, they can stay, and any vampire lords under their command or in their service could still feed or bottle the blood. We would just need some themed bonuses more related to necromancers for their factions. Though if Gorst were to undergo some miraculous transformation and wake up one morning as a Strigoi legendary lord, I certainly wouldn't complain. To wrap up, I think we can all agree that the vampire counts need some love, and that there are numerous ways to improve their campaign. Perhaps my ideas, sparked by the fantastic V Rising, can be seen at the very least as food for thought. If you've made it this far, then I've done my job and been mildly entertaining, but thank you for sticking around. why not sub to the channel, and don't forget to click that like button and leave a comment. If you haven't played V Rising, then I recommend you check it out. It's a great game with a heap of potential, and will surely get a lot more content in the years to come. Links to my Discord and Patreon can be found in the video description, as can a link to my Warhammer 2 workshop, where you can check out my mods and see my ideas put into practice. Finally, I'd like to thank Hot Apple Pie for their continued support of the channel. I'm Grey Tiger, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.